The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of gunpowder, swirling like a tempest above the battlefield of Gettysburg. It was July 3rd, 1863. The sun hung high, casting a harsh light on the chaos below. The ground trembled beneath the weight of thousands of boots marching in relentless formation. A cacophony of thunderous cannon fire and the sharp crack of rifles echoed like a relentless heartbeat. Men shouted, their voices mingling with the cries of the wounded, a symphony of desperation and valor. Robert E. Lee stood on a rise, his gaze piercing through the haze, surveying the field that sprawled before him. His heart was a drum, pounding with both resolve and doubt. The moment was fraught with tension, a fulcrum upon which the fate of the Confederacy teetered. To his left, the sound of artillery roared, like a monstrous beast unleashed, while to his right, the desperate cries of his men pierced the air, mingling with the cries of the dying. In the distance, the Union line stood firm, their blue uniforms a stark contrast against the scorched earth. Lee's mind raced, strategizing, calculating the risks of his next order. He had always believed in the cause, had always held fast to the ideals of honor and duty. But today doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Would this charge, this audacious assault known as Pickett's Charge, be the triumph he envisioned, or a fatal miscalculation that would echo through history? As he raised his arm, signaling the attack, time seemed to stretch, a moment suspended in the tempest of war. He could almost hear the whispers of those who had fallen before him, a solemn reminder of the cost of valor. The men surged forward, a wave of humanity propelled by the fire of conviction, the ground beneath them trembling with each step. But to understand how we got here, in the quietude of Westmoreland County, Virginia, on January 19, 1807, the earth breathed in the chill of winter. The air was crisp, and the distant sounds of the Rappahannock River flowing over its stones whispered secrets to the trees. It was in this cradle of history that Robert Edward Lee took his first breath, the fifth child of Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee III and Anne Hill Carter Lee. Their home, a modest yet dignified estate, was steeped in the traditions of Virginia aristocracy. The walls echoed with tales of valor and sacrifice, of a family legacy carved from the very marrow of the American Revolutionary War. Henry Lee, a cavalry officer, had once galloped across fields of glory, his name sung in the ballads of soldiers and statesmen alike. But the shadows of financial struggle loomed over the family, a reality that painted young Robert's upbringing with both privilege and constraint. His father, once a figure of honor, battled debts that clung like a heavy fog, while his mother, a force of unwavering strength, imbued him with the values of duty, honor, and discipline. The scent of her home-cooked meals wafted through the corridors, mingling with the dust of history, reminding the children of their place in the world, a world that was both vast and treacherous. As the seasons turned, Robert grew into a boy of quiet introspection, often found wandering the wooded paths that threaded through the countryside. The rustle of leaves underfoot and the chirping of crickets became his companions. He absorbed the world around him, the beauty of the landscape, the echoes of his ancestors, and the whispers of duty that called to him like a distant drum. He was a child shaped by the gentle insistence of nature, the teachings of his mother, and the fading glory of his father's reputation. In 1825, as Robert prepared to embark on a journey far from home, the hallowed halls of the United States Military Academy at West Point awaited. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the distant clamor of cadets marching in formation. The academy, a bastion of discipline and honor, was a crucible that would forge him into a leader. He was determined, driven by an inner compass that pointed toward duty. Here, he would learn the art of war, tempered by the weight of responsibility. He graduated second in his class in 1829, a feat that hinted at the remarkable potential within him, a potential that would soon be tested on battlefields far and wide. As the years unfurled, Robert Lee found himself immersed in the tumult of the Mexican-American War. The year was 1846, and the air was charged with the anticipation of conflict. The clanging of swords and the shouts of soldiers filled the air as he rode alongside his comrades, the taste of dust mingling with the metallic tang of gunpowder. Lee, commanding with a firm yet composed demeanor, carved his name into the annals of history through his strategic brilliance at battles such as the Siege of Veracruz. The camaraderie of the soldiers around him, their laughter mingling with the sounds of cannon fire, created a bond that would endure beyond the ravages of war. Yet, even as victory beckoned, the world around him began to shift. The nation was becoming a cauldron of tension, with the question of slavery simmering just beneath the surface. The air crackled with the weight of differing ideologies, the North and the South drawn apart by the very fabric of their beliefs. The scent of cotton and tobacco wafted through the southern plantations, their bounties built on the backs of enslaved people, while the North championed the ideals of freedom and equality. Robert, navigating the turbulent waters of this growing divide, found himself in the center of a storm that would ultimately test not only his military prowess, but also his very soul. In the years that followed, Lee returned to West Point as the superintendent, where the scent of ink and parchment mingled with the youthful exuberance of cadets eager to learn. It was here that he shaped the minds of future leaders, instilling in them the principles that had guided him. The sound of chalk scraping against the blackboard filled the classrooms, punctuated by the laughter and camaraderie of young men preparing to defend their nation. But beneath the surface, the whispers of discontent grew louder, the rumblings of a nation on the brink of fracture. As the clock struck midnight on April 12, 1861, the world changed irrevocably. The air was tense, thick with the promise of conflict. The sound of cannon fire echoed across the plains of Charleston Harbor, signaling the beginning of the American Civil War. Robert Lee, faced with a heart-wrenching decision, chose to resign from the United States Army. His loyalty to Virginia, his home, drew him back like a moth to a flame, even as the shadows of impending war loomed large. It was a choice that would set in motion a series of events that few could have foreseen. As he donned the gray uniform of the Confederate States Army, the weight of his decision settled upon him like a heavy cloak. The air crackled with the tension of impending battles, the cries of soldiers rising in fervor. Lee, a figure of both honor and conflict, now stood at a precipice, straddling two worlds. The scent of gunpowder and the sounds of clashing steel would soon become his reality, as the nation he loved tore itself apart. Robert E. Lee's journey had only just begun, a path marked by valor and despair, triumph and loss. As he prepared to lead his troops into the heart of conflict, the echoes of his past whispered to him, the lessons of duty, the weight of legacy, and the indelible mark of history that he was destined to leave behind. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the tides of fate sweep him into the abyss? As twilight cloaked the landscape, a reckoning approached, and the world held its breath. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, a dance upon the precipice of glory and ruin, and the stage was set for the unfolding of a saga that would leave an indelible imprint on the fabric of America. And so, with the weight of his choices resting heavily upon him, Robert E. Lee stepped forward into the unknown. The night was still, and the air was thick with possibility. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and the sharp tang of sweat as Robert E. Lee's star rose amidst the chaos of war. The year was 1862, and the landscape of Virginia was marred by the scars of conflict. The rolling hills, once vibrant with the greens of spring, now lay littered with the remnants of battle. Lee, commanding the Army of Northern Virginia, stood resolute, his figure a silhouette against the fiery orange of the setting sun, a harbinger of the struggles yet to come. In those early months, his reputation began to crystallize. Each victory, like the triumph at the Battle of Fredericksburg in December, where the cold air crackled with the sound of musket fire and the cries of men, solidified his image as a formidable leader. The Confederate army, weary and battered, found renewed vigor in his presence. His strategic brilliance was evident. He maneuvered his troops with a deftness that seemed almost preordained. The sound of cannon fire echoed across the fields, a grim symphony that underscored his ascent. Yet as Lee basked in the glow of victory, doubt lingered beneath the surface. The weight of command pressed heavily upon him, each decision echoing in the vastness of his mind. It was not merely the lives of his soldiers that rested on his shoulders, but the very ideals for which they fought. The Southern cause, steeped in issues of sovereignty and way of life, felt ever more fragile. As he paced the tent at night, the flickering light of lanterns casting shadows that danced like phantoms, he contemplated the future. Would their sacrifices lead to triumph or despair? The rise of Lee was also marked by the fervor of the people around him. The southern states rallied behind him with an almost fervent zeal. Women prepared care packages, sewing blankets and baking bread, their hands stained with flour and their hearts filled with hope. The scent of salt and sweat mingled in the air as men sharpened their swords, their voices rising in spirited songs of glory and freedom. It was a time of fervent nationalism, where the tales of valor and sacrifice wove a tapestry of identity that enveloped the South. In the bustling streets of Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy, the atmosphere pulsed with a sense of purpose. Young boys waved flags, their faces painted with the colors of the South, while elders recounted stories of past glories, of battles won and lost, echoing through the warm air like the distant rumble of thunder. The people believed they were on the brink of a new era, one that would redefine their existence and secure their place in history. The fervent belief in their cause, coupled with Lee's rising prominence, ignited a fire that spread like wildfire through the hearts of men. But with power came the inevitable specter of crisis. The year 1863 ushered in a series of challenges that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their aspirations. The harsh winter had laid bare the struggles of the Confederate Army, and the grim realities of war began to seep into the collective consciousness. As Lee prepared for the pivotal Battle of Gettysburg, the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the foreboding of fate. On July 1st, 1863, the first shots rang out in the small Pennsylvania town. The crisp morning light glinted off the metal of rifles, illuminating the faces of soldiers caught in the throes of desperation and courage. Lee, perched upon his horse, surveyed the battlefield with piercing eyes, feeling the pulse of history quicken beneath him. The sound of cannon fire roared like thunder, drowning out the cries of men. Each blast echoed the uncertainty of the moment, the reality that not all would emerge unscathed. As the battle raged, Lee made the fateful decision to order Pickett's charge on July 3. The sun blazed overhead, casting oppressive heat that clung to the skin like a suffocating shroud. The air was thick with tension, a palpable energy that coursed through the ranks of his soldiers. With a mere gesture, he signaled the advance, his arm raised like a conductor orchestrating a symphony fraught with peril. Hope mingled with dread as men surged forward, their hearts pounding in synchrony with the rhythm of war. But the charge met with devastating resistance. The sound of cannonballs whistling through the air was deafening, a cacophony of destruction that shattered the dreams of countless men. Blood soaked the fields, mingling with the earth, a grim testament to the cost of ambition. Lee, witnessing the carnage unfold, felt the weight of despair settle upon him. The ground, once a battleground of valor, turned into a graveyard of shattered dreams and broken bodies. In the days that followed, the South faced the staggering aftermath of defeat. The scent of smoke lingered in the air, a bitter reminder of what had transpired. Lee, grappling with the implications of the loss, understood that the tide had turned. The dreams of a new nation, so fervently held, now seemed to hang by a thread. The voices of the people, once filled with hope and determination, began to waver. Whispers of doubt crept into conversations, and the promise of victory felt more elusive with each passing day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, Lee wrestled with his own legacy. The rise that had once felt so certain now seemed overshadowed by the enormity of the struggle ahead. He understood that history would judge him, not just as a general, but as a symbol of a cause that was larger than himself. The ideals he fought for were enmeshed in complexities that transcended the battlefield. And yet, amidst the uncertainty, the resolve of the Southern people remained unbroken. They sought solace in their shared identity, clinging to the values that had shaped their lives. The narratives of bravery and sacrifice continued to resonate, echoing in the hearts of those who believed in the cause. Lee's rise, though marked by turmoil, also illuminated a path forward, one that would force them to confront the very essence of their existence. As the chapter of Rise came to a close, the night wrapped around Lee like a comforting cloak. The The stars flickered in the vast expanse above, a cosmic reminder of the struggles and triumphs of mankind. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, yet the spirit of those who had fought and bled for their beliefs would remain, echoing through the annals of time. They were not merely soldiers, they were the embodiment of dreams, hopes, and the relentless pursuit of meaning in a world forever altered by the fires of conflict. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. It was the summer of 1863, and the heat bore down upon the fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, like a heavy blanket. For Robert E. Lee, the Confederate commander, the stakes had never felt higher. The Union Army, under the command of General George Meade, had met them at this crossroads, where fate would soon unfold in a maelstrom of chaos and loss. As the sun rose on July 1st, 1863, a sense of urgency electrified the Confederate ranks. Lee surveyed the landscape, his sharp blue eyes scanning the undulating hills and the distant woods. The sounds of distant cannonade echoed, punctuated by the cries of men rallying to their banners. The moment had come for the bold maneuvers he was known for, the audacity that had brought him victories at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. But this time felt different. There was a weight in the air, a sense of foreboding that clung to his skin like the oppressive humidity. On that fateful day, the clash began with a series of skirmishes at McPherson's Ridge. Lee's forces clashed with Union troops, and the din of battle erupted, a cacophony of gunfire and the thunderous roar of artillery. It was a brutal ballet where valor met desperation. The cries of the wounded echoed through the trees, mingling with the shouts of commanders giving orders, as men fought for their lives, for their homes, for the very soul of their nation. Among the Confederate soldiers was a young man named Henry, a mere 19, with dreams of glory and a heart full of conviction. He had joined the fight for the South, inspired by the tales of valor he heard from his father, a veteran of the Mexican-American War. As the bullets whizzed past him, he could feel the earth tremble beneath his feet, the heat of the sun scorching his back. With each pull of the trigger, he felt the weight of his choice, the weight of history pressing down upon him. As the sun climbed higher, the first day of battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Lee, witnessing the ferocity of the Union defense, felt a flicker of doubt. The Confederates pressed forward, but the terrain was not in their favor. The Union soldiers, entrenched on Cemetery Hill, held the high ground with a fierce determination. The cries of the wounded were punctuated by the staccato rhythm of gunfire, creating a haunting symphony of despair. On July 2nd, the heat bore down heavier than before. Lee, determined to seize the initiative, ordered an assault on the Union flanks. The sound of marching feet echoed as men prepared for what they believed could be a decisive blow. But as the day wore on, the cost began to reveal itself. The air was thick with the cries of the fallen, mingling with the musky scent of sweat and smoke. Each step forward was marred by the bodies of comrades, their lifeblood soaking the ground beneath them. The Confederate assault on Little Round Top became a desperate struggle. Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain of the 20th Maine held his position with fierce resolve, commanding his men to hold the line at all costs. The clash was palpable, the tension electric. The Union's bayonets glinted in the sunlight, a glimmer of hope against the encroaching wave of gray. As the Confederates charged, the air filled with the cries of men grappling with fear and courage. Each soldier fought not just for victory, but for the brotherhood of men standing beside them. Yet as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the tide began to turn. The Union line held firm, and the Confederate forces found themselves faltering, their ranks diminished by the relentless onslaught. Lee, surveying the battlefield, felt the heavy weight of responsibility settle upon him. He had called for the charge, now he watched as it unraveled. His heart sank, a deep ache forming in the pit of his stomach. The losses were catastrophic, the faces of brave men fading into the dust of history. Then came July 3rd, a day that would echo through time as one of the darkest moments for the Confederacy. Lee, resolute but troubled, prepared for what he believed would be a decisive charge. Pickett's charge, the culmination of their efforts. He stood at the crest of Cemetery Ridge, the air vibrating with tension. The Union forces, now fortified and ready, awaited the onslaught with grim determination. "General Lee," one of his aides murmured, "are you certain this is wise?" The question hung in the air, heavy like the humidity that enveloped the battlefield. Lee nodded, the resolve in his heart tempered by the urgency of the moment. He raised his arm, signaling the attack, the culmination of desperation and hope intermingled in that singular action. The Confederate soldiers surged forward, their battle cries ringing out, a chorus of valor and anguish. The sound of cannon fire erupted, a thunderous roar that drowned out all else. The air was thick with the smoke of gunpowder, and the ground shook beneath their feet as they charged toward the seemingly impenetrable Union line. But as they advanced, the reality of their plight became painfully clear. The Union cannons unleashed a devastating barrage, mowing down men in waves. Amidst the chaos, Henry fought on, adrenaline coursing through his veins, his heart pounding like a drum. He stumbled over the bodies of fallen comrades, their lifeless forms a stark reminder of the cost of war. The cries of the wounded pierced his ears, but he pressed on, driven by a fierce loyalty to his cause. Yet with each step, he felt the weight of despair creeping in, a realization that the dream of glory was slipping away. As the last remnants of the charge faltered, a profound silence fell over the battlefield, punctuated only by the moans of the injured and the cries for help. The landscape, once vibrant with the hopes of a nation, lay marred by the scars of conflict. The human cost was staggering, thousands of lives lost, dreams extinguished in an instant. Lee stood amid the ruins of his ambition, the weight of defeat settling heavily upon his shoulders. The Battle of Gettysburg would mark a turning point, a moment when the tide of war shifted irrevocably. As night fell and the remnants of both armies regrouped, the air was thick with sorrow and uncertainty. Lee knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, a struggle not just for territory, but for the very soul of a nation divided. In the quiet of the evening, as the stars twinkled above, the reflections of those tumultuous days would linger, shaping the legacy of Robert E. Lee and the history of America itself. Amidst the fading light of July 4, 1863, the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg hung heavily in the air, a palpable silence settling over the fields where valor had met its cruel fate. The once vibrant landscape, now marred by the remnants of conflict, bore witness to the sacrifices made by thousands, a sorrowful testament to the toll of war. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked earth, where the cries of the living mingled with the whispers of the fallen. Robert E. Lee, weary and contemplative, stood amongst the scattered remnants of his army, his heart a tempest of anguish and resolve. The retreat from Gettysburg was not simply a strategic withdrawal, it was a deep wound to his spirit. The defeat had not only cost him men, brave and noble, but also the momentum he had sought to capitalize on, a chance to turn the tide of the Civil War. As he surveyed the battlefield, the acrid scent of gunpowder clung to the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of churned soil and decaying grass. It was a reminder of the fierce struggle that had taken place, the valor of those who had fought, and the lives extinguished in the pursuit of a cause that had consumed so many. In those moments, Lee's thoughts drifted to his family, to the gentle wisdom of his mother, Anne Hill Carter Lee. Her teachings echoed in his mind, urging him to act with honor and integrity, even in the face of despair. He could almost hear her voice, a soothing balm against the chaos of war, reminding him of the responsibility he bore, not just as a general, but as a man of principle. Yet, the weight of his decisions pressed heavily upon him. Was this the honor he had sought to uphold? The victory he had envisioned now seemed like a distant dream, slipping through his fingers like the last rays of sunlight. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, Ulysses S. Grant, having heard of the Confederate defeat, felt a surge of determination. The Union forces, bolstered by their triumph at Gettysburg, were now emboldened. Grant, aware of the significance of this moment, felt the shift in the balance of power. The air crackled with the promise of change. He understood that the tide was turning, not just in the war, but in the spirit of the nation. Each step he took echoed with the resolve of a nation yearning for unity, a vision for a future unmarred by the divisions of the past. As Grant prepared to continue his campaign, he reflected on the lives shaped by this unrelenting struggle. The voices of those who had fought, both north and south, whispered through the trees, resonating with a profound sense of loss and hope. In the quiet aftermath of battle, he knew that the struggle was far from over, yet a new path lay before him, illuminated by the bravery displayed on those hallowed grounds. Back in the South, Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States, grappled with the implications of Gettysburg. Sitting in his office, the weight of leadership pressed down upon him. A single candle flickered in the dim light, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with maps of the South. This was a moment to reflect on the fragile nature of their cause, the dreams of independence now clouded by the specter of defeat. Davis understood that the resolve of the Confederacy would be tested in ways he had never anticipated. The loss at Gettysburg threatened to fracture the very foundation of their aspirations. As reports flooded in from the front lines, he felt the urgency to rally the spirits of the Southern populace. The air was thick with the scent of desperation, a stark contrast to the fervor that had once animated their fight. The cries of wounded soldiers haunted his thoughts, a constant reminder of the lives forever altered by the war. He knew he had to inspire hope, even in the face of mounting despair, for the heart of the Confederacy lay in the unwavering spirit of its people. In the days that followed, the impact of Gettysburg rippled through the lives of those who had fought. The soldiers, weary and battered, trudged back to their camps, nursing wounds both seen and unseen. The camaraderie forged in the heat of battle, the bonds of brotherhood that had united them, now faced a trial of endurance. They tended to their injuries amidst the lingering scent of gunpowder and sweat, the weight of grief settling heavily on their shoulders. Each man carried not only the scars of battle, but the memories of friends lost, their laughter and dreams extinguished in the chaos. As the Confederate army retreated, Lee's heart ached for those he had led into the fray. He could see their faces etched in his memory, brave men who had followed him with unwavering loyalty. The thought of their sacrifice haunted him as he rode through the desolate fields, the sound of hooves crunching on the gravel punctuating the silence. With each step, he felt the burden of responsibility, the chilling realization that leadership demanded not only courage, but also the willingness to bear the weight of loss. Yet amidst the sorrow, a flicker of resilience began to emerge. Lee understood that his role was not merely to lead armies, but to inspire hope in a time of despair. In the stillness of his thoughts, he sought to find a path forward. The war was far from over, and the spirit of the South, though shaken, was not broken. The vision of a united cause, of honor and duty, still beckoned him, urging him to rise once more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the land, Lee contemplated the legacy he would leave behind. A legacy not defined solely by victories or defeats, but by the values he held dear: duty, honor, and an unwavering commitment to his people. With every breath, he felt the pulse of history, a reminder that though the battle at Gettysburg had shifted the tide, the fight for the soul of a nation would continue. In the soft embrace of twilight, Lee whispered a silent vow to his fallen comrades, their spirits entwined with his own. He would carry their memory forward, a guiding light in the darkness, as he prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead. The journey was far from over, and in that quiet moment, the air thick with promise, he resolved to lead with both strength and compassion, for the future of a nation hung in the balance. In the dim light of dawn on July 4th, 1863, the battlefield of Gettysburg lay cloaked in a heavy fog, the air thick with the scent of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. The previous days had been marked by cacophonous roars of cannon fire and the anguished cries of men, now replaced by an eerie silence. The remnants of battle were strewn across the fields, a grim testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Soldiers, once brimming with fervor and resolve, now lay still, their bodies crumpled in the wake of violence. This was the aftermath, the haunting stillness that followed the storm of war. As the sun began its slow ascent, casting a pale light over the chaotic remnants, the survivors emerged from the shadows of despair. Union soldiers, weary and battle-worn, moved cautiously through the fields, stepping over fallen comrades in the debris of war, discarded weapons, tattered uniforms, and the remnants of once proud banners. The air was thick with the odor of smoke and decay, a pungent reminder of the lives lost in this tragic encounter. They spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories of bravery and loss, their voices barely rising above the whisper of the wind through the grass. Among them, a young soldier named Henry found himself grappling with the enormity of what had transpired. Just days before, he had marched into battle with dreams of glory, his heart swelling with patriotic fervor. Now, he knelt beside a fallen comrade, the weight of grief settling heavily upon his shoulders. The stillness of the battlefield was punctuated by the occasional sob or the distant call of a bugle, summoning the living to remember the dead. The faces of those he had fought beside flashed before him, their laughter now silenced, their dreams extinguished. The world around him felt surreal, as if time had paused in reverence for the fallen. As the days turned into weeks, the wounded were gathered and transported to makeshift hospitals, where the air was filled with the acrid scent of antiseptics, mingling with the earthy odor of sweat and blood. Surgeons, grim and resolute, toiled tirelessly, their hands stained with the evidence of their work. The sounds of moans and whispered prayers filled the rooms, mingling with the clattering of instruments and the rustling of medical supplies. Here, amidst the chaos of healing, the human spirit was tested and challenged. Some soldiers would find solace in the camaraderie of shared suffering, while others wrestled with the haunting memories of their fallen friends. In the aftermath of Gettysburg, both North and South faced a reckoning. The Confederate Army, once buoyed by the hope of victory, now found itself reeling from the loss of thousands of men. General Robert E. Lee, a figure of both respect and admiration, was forced to confront the weight of his decisions. The remnants of his army were battered and bruised, their spirits dimmed by the staggering toll of the battle. Yet, even amid despair, Lee remained steadfast, his mind racing with thoughts of strategy and the future of his beleaguered forces. In the quiet of his tent, the flickering light of an oil lamp cast shadows on the walls, illuminating the furrowed brow of a man burdened by the weight of leadership. Lee was a man of great honor, yet he felt the gnawing pangs of self-doubt. He could almost hear the whispers of his fallen soldiers echoing in his mind, their spirits urging him to press on. Around him, maps lay sprawled across the table, the ink smudged where his fingers had traced paths of potential movement. Yet in those moments of solitude, he could not shake the feeling that the war was shifting, that the tide may not turn in their favor again. The political landscape was equally tumultuous. In Richmond, President Jefferson Davis faced mounting pressure from both his advisors and the populace, who were grappling with the reality of defeat. The air was thick with tension, each conversation a delicate dance around the stark truths of their situation. The Confederate dream, once vibrant and alive, now felt fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. Davis, too, felt the weight of leadership, the burden of guiding a nation through its darkest hour. He pondered the path ahead, knowing that hope was a fragile thing, and yet he sought to inspire resilience among the people. As the leaves turned from green to gold in the months following Gettysburg, the landscape of the South began to mirror the emotional turmoil of its people. Fields that had once been alive with the laughter of children and the toil of farmers now lay barren, a stark reminder of the lives interrupted by war. Towns and villages echoed with the absence of men, the sound of hammers and saws replaced by the haunting silence of loss. Yet, amid the sorrow, there began to emerge a sense of unity, a shared resolve among the people to rebuild what had been lost, to honor the memory of those who had sacrificed everything. Throughout the South, memorials began to rise, humble tributes to the fallen, with wooden crosses marking the graves of soldiers who would never return home. The air was filled with the scent of blooming magnolias, a bittersweet reminder of life continuing amidst the grief. Families gathered to reminisce about their loved ones, sharing stories that wove together threads of valor and sacrifice. In these moments of remembrance, the past lingered like a haunting melody, a song that would echo through generations. As winter settled over the landscape, the chill in the air mirrored the somber mood that hung over the nation. Yet even in the depths of winter, sparks of hope began to flicker. Schools reopened, and the spirit of learning took root in the hearts of children who had witnessed the ravages of war. In the midst of despair, the promise of the future began to take shape. The legacy of those who had fought at Gettysburg would not be forgotten. It would be transformed into a narrative of resilience, a testament to the enduring human spirit. Robert E. Lee, now a figure of both reverence and controversy, would navigate the complexities of his new role in this changing world. As he walked through the hallowed grounds of the battlefield, the whispers of the past filled his ears. Each step was a reminder of the weight of sacrifice, the burdens borne by men who believed in their cause. In the quiet of his thoughts, he found solace, perhaps not in victory, but in the knowledge that the story of these men would continue, woven into the fabric of the nation. And so, as the seasons changed, the legacy of Gettysburg began to carve its place in the hearts of a nation struggling to heal. The echoes of the past would linger, guiding the steps of those who sought to find meaning amid the wreckage. The world, though forever altered, would continue to turn, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the very essence of life that persists, even in the shadow of loss. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, the legacy of Robert E. Lee began to take shape in the minds and hearts of a nation still grappling with the scars of its past. The echoes of cannon fire and the cries of soldiers lingered in the air, but it was in the quiet moments of reflection that the true story of Lee began to evolve. This was no longer just the tale of a general. It was a narrative woven into the very fabric of American identity, replete with heroism, tragedy, and deep moral questions. In the years following the Civil War, the South sought to reconstruct not only its cities, but also its very soul. The figure of Robert E. Lee emerged as a symbol, a complex emblem of Southern pride. Statues began to rise in public squares, casting their long shadows over the streets where men and women gathered to discuss the future of a nation still divided. These statues were not merely stone and bronze, they were monuments of memory, testaments to a shared history that many wished to celebrate. Yet as the soft whispers of admiration filled the air, a different kind of narrative began to take root, a narrative that sought to romanticize the lost cause. In this retelling, Lee was transformed into a chivalrous knight, a tragic hero who fought valiantly for a noble cause. The complexities of his decisions were often overshadowed by the idealization of his character. Schools taught children that Lee was a defender of states' rights, a valorous leader who embodied Southern honor. In this light, the Confederacy was painted not as a rebellion rooted in the preservation of slavery, but as a struggle to uphold the principles of liberty and self-determination. Yet, as the years rolled on, the historical record remained. The weight of Lee's legacy became burdened with contradictions. In the depths of his heart, Lee had expressed doubts about the institution of slavery, writing in a letter that he believed it to be a moral and political evil. However, his actions during the war and his decision to fight for the Confederacy cast a long shadow over those sentiments. The dichotomy between his personal beliefs and his public role became a source of contention, debated fervently by historians and the public alike. As the 20th century dawned, the nation found itself at a crossroads. The civil rights movement began to challenge the narratives that had long been accepted. The very statues that once represented Southern pride became focal points for renewed debates about race, equality, and the interpretation of history. In cities like New Orleans and Charlottesville, the presence of Lee's statue became a reminder of the struggles endured and the injustices faced by generations. The air thickened with tension as activists called for the removal of these monuments, urging society to confront the painful truths of its past. The discussions surrounding Lee's legacy were as tumultuous as the battles he had fought. Some viewed the removal of his statues as an erasure of history, a denial of the sacrifices made by those who fought bravely in the name of the Confederacy. Others saw it as a necessary step towards healing, a chance to redefine the narrative, to acknowledge the pain inflicted upon countless individuals and families due to the institution that Lee had once defended. In the quiet corners of classrooms and living rooms across America, the story of Robert E. Lee continued to be told, but it took on new dimensions. Educators began to emphasize the importance of examining history with a critical lens, encouraging students to engage with the complexities of the past. The conversations began to shift from glorification to understanding. They asked, what did Lee's actions reveal about the values and conflicts of his time? What can we learn from the past as we navigate the challenges of the present? As the years turned into decades, Lee's name became synonymous with both valor and controversy. His life story served as a case study in moral ambiguity, a reminder that even the most revered figures can be flawed. The narratives surrounding him reflected the shifting tides of society, revealing humanity's struggle to reconcile its ideals with its actions. In the hearts of many, the legacy of Robert E. Lee became a source of introspection. What does it mean to honor a man who fought for a cause that upheld the very institution of slavery? What responsibility does society have to acknowledge the pain of the past while striving for a more inclusive future? These questions lingered in the air, unspoken, yet palpable. The impact of Lee's legacy extended beyond the borders of Virginia and the South. His story became woven into the larger tapestry of American history, influencing conversations about leadership, sacrifice, and the moral implications of war. Generations of Americans grappled with the lessons of the past, working to forge a path that honored the complexities of their ancestors while striving for justice and equality. As the sun set on the fabric of history, the legacy of Robert E. Lee remained a contested terrain. It was a narrative fraught with both admiration and criticism, a tale that served as a mirror reflecting the ongoing struggles of a society attempting to reconcile its past with its future. The whispers of those who came before us echoed through the years, a reminder that history is not a distant memory, but a living, breathing entity that shapes our understanding of who we are. In the end, Robert E. Lee's story was more than just the life of a general. It became a profound exploration of the human experience, a testament to the struggle between duty and morality, loss and redemption. The legacy of Lee, like the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, invites us to listen, to reflect, to learn, and to grow as we navigate the complexities of our shared history. As we drift into sleep, may we carry with us the weight of these stories, the echoes of the past, and the promise of a better tomorrow. As the echoes of Robert E. Lee's life fade into the twilight of history, one is left to ponder the fragile threads that weave the fabric of human experience. His journey, marked by ambition and duty, reflects a deeper narrative of what it means to strive for something greater than oneself. Born into privilege, yet shaped by the struggles of his family, Lee embodied a paradox, an individual steeped in honor, yet entwined in the very conflicts that would test the limits of his character. In the quiet moments of contemplation, we find ourselves drawn to the relentless pursuit of power and its inevitable consequences. Lee's ascent to prominence was not merely a testament to military prowess, but a reflection of a broader human desire to achieve, to lead, and to leave an indelible mark upon the world. Yet, as history teaches us, ambition often dances closely with peril. The weight of leadership bore down upon him, revealing the frailty of resolve when faced with the tide of war and the moral complexities entwined within it. Love, too, played a vital role in shaping Lee's path. The bond with his family, especially his wife Mary, provided him with solace amid the storm. Yet as the war waged on, that love was tested, strained by the demands of a nation divided. In those fleeting moments of connection, we see the enduring truth that even the most revered figures are, at their core, human, vulnerable, and seeking understanding in a world fraught with uncertainty. The legacy of Robert E. Lee invites reflection on our own ambitions, our relationships, and the choices we make in the face of adversity. It reminds us that survival often comes at a cost, that the pursuit of ideals can lead to both glory and grief. As you drift into sleep, consider the lessons woven into his story, the complexities of ambition, the power of love, and the echoes of our own choices resonating through time. Carry these reflections with you, weaving them into the fabric of your own journey as the night wraps around you like a gentle embrace.